Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Nashville Tour Stop podcast. My name is Aaron, and actually not across the table from me today, but all the way across the pond, we've got Danny McMahon, friend of the show. Danny, how are you?
I'm good, dude. I'm great. I'm cold. It's very, very cold in the UK at the moment, but other than that, it's all good. It's all good. We're loving life, living it to its fullest, always.
Dude, where are you located? Because I personally know, but the fans of the show might not. So where are you over there in the UK?
Yeah, I'm in a place called Bristol, so it's like 2 hours west of London, basically.
Okay.
So on the way towards Wales, but yeah, it's sort of like the West Country, we call it over here.
Are you a native to Bristol, or did you move there?
I am, yeah. I've lived here my whole life. Weirdly, I was born here, and all my family have moved away from here, which is is really interesting. Yeah, but I'm very much native to Bristol. Lived here my whole life. Sort of spent a bit of time in London, sort of in between, but always come back to Bristol.
Cool. Is there a very vibrant music scene over there in Bristol? Because I've been to London and I've performed there, but I'm not too familiar with the music scene like outside of the let's just call it the one huge major city there.
Yeah, Bristol definitely has its own music scene. It's sort of, it's quite sort of left field in the sense that there's like a lot of dubstep and grime and a lot, there's ska and reggae music. A lot of that, it's very cultural. It's very culturally diverse, Bristol as a place. So like that's kind of like what's really big over in, as say, this part of the country. As say, obviously London, I've sort of done a lot of like pop sort of stuff, and the other city that's obviously very big for it is for music in the UK is Manchester. Obviously you've had sort of like, the Oasis, Stone Roses, all of that kind of thing, and a lot of like the big guitar bands sort of like come up from like in and around that area. So that's a great area for music. It's always on the tour circuit as well.
Well, that's cool. Before we get too deep into it, I like to start most of our shows by just asking, do you remember how you and I met years and years ago?
Absolutely, yeah. It was Belcourt Taps, wasn't it?
Belcourt Taps, R.I.P.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, what a night that was. Yeah, you were, as I say, you were the very first person to ever put me on at a show in Nashville, so forever grateful for that.
Was I really?
Yeah, you were, yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
was at Belcourt. Hot dog. Man, that place was kind of a hub of just about everybody of all varieties. It went there.
Oh, dude, it was such a vibe, honestly. Like, as I said, like, I've probably told you before, like, I arrived there, I was excited and terrified in equal measure, I would say, that day. Because I was just like, I've been to Nashville before, but I'd done a lot of studio-based work that I'd done there the previous time. But actually going and playing live and seeing how talented and great everybody was, I was like, oh my God, this is like such a level up. I'm going to have to just be like on my A game tonight.
I was talking about that not too long ago, about how like when you first move here, you come here expecting like, oh, I'm kind of like hot. Like I was like one of the best people in my hometown. Like I was one of the people who was like, I was going to, quote, make it. And then I came to Nashville and I was like, I got to stop talking so loud, man. Everybody who is here is the best person from their hometown.
Legit. That's the best way to describe it. Like, as I say, it was just like, for me, it was just like those writers' rounds there. It was very much baptism by fire. I think it was, I was trying to remember who I was on the round with. I think initially it was Kyle Elliott, and he started singing, and I was just like, dude, the tone is just like unbelievable. And then you guys did the one after me, and I still, to this day, swear down that was the best writers' round I've ever watched in my life. Anywhere, ever. It was a vibe.
Let's see. What year was it that you first played? Was that 2020 or 2019?
That was 2019.
Okay, well, let's. I keep a archive of all of our shows so that I can actually go back and see who was playing what, where, and when. So let's actually go back into the spreadsheet here and see who you were playing with. You played with Kyle Elliott, Dallas Caroline, and Frank Giavetti on September 22nd. In 2019 at 7:00.
There we go. My historical archives.
Yep. Then that next round was me, Zane Parmenter, Colin Rowe, and Tyler Bank. That was dude. That was a hot night, man.
It was legit. It was so good. I've literally got so many clips of it still saved on my phone. Like, so it was good.
Do you still make it over to the States very often to perform, or is like Nashville the one place you come to?
No, so in the summer, I spent a lot of time sort of like on the West Coast. So I flew into LA, I did some shows there, and then we went through Vegas and then up to Idaho and did a bunch of shows up there as well. So all through like people I basically met in Nashville who are obviously from outside of Nashville and say, oh yeah, can you come to wherever, come to our hometown and we'll put on a show for you there, and hopefully hoping to go back. I met a guy whilst I was in Idaho who does like a load of shows sort of all across the north, sort of like in Montana and Wisconsin, all that kind of thing. So just getting to go to new places and see new things, and that's always the dream, that's always the vibe.
When was the first time you came here?
It was 2018. That was the whole reason for me. Like when I first started doing country music as a guy from the UK, obviously everything I'm influenced by is obviously everything that's being made over there. So for me, in my head, for it to be credible, I had to go to the States and people take it seriously.
Right.
That was genuinely for me. It was like that. That's what it had to be. Like that was sort of like the essence of what I was trying to achieve. So if people thought I was, sort of not authentic enough, or were they actually going to, actually get an understanding for what it is that I was trying to do? So actually, it was only 2 months into when I actually brought out my first single. I got a call from the guys at Springboard Festival, and they said to me, they was like, we've heard your stuff, we'd love you to come over to San Diego in in a week's time.
Like, hell yeah.
Yeah, so it was like baptism by fire. So the very first time I'd ever seen anyone hear my music in the States, I literally had I had like a panel up on stage. So it's very much sort of like South by Southwest vibe. You have like a panel, and I had basically 200 American musicians behind me, 4 panel guys in front of me who had won Grammys, people had discovered Nickelback and whatever else and all that kind of stuff. And this is the very first time anybody in the States has heard my music. And I'm just like, oh God, this could go like one or two ways. And it went well, and, got a production deal and came back to Nashville. Well, went to Nashville for the first time sort of like 6 months later. So that was kind of how the journey began.
Dude, that's pretty awesome. Not everybody goes to a new country the first time. It immediately hits it off.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was cool. I was just like, I knew straight away. I was like, this is where I got to try and be headed as much as possible, because I just got, as you know, like when you put out music, you get a vibe of how people are sort of appreciating it. And so we played, a bunch of shows, and the response that we got was just incredible. So it was really cool. So
how did music kind of come into the picture of your life? Because I know a lot of us are, shall we say, lifer musicians. We started when we were like 3 inches big, and we literally like grew up in the womb listening to like Mozart through the headphones on the belly.
Literally, yeah. I mean, it was a really interesting one for me, because like music was definitely like always around. Like my dad is a really great musician, plays about 1 million different instruments, was in like several bands. There was always music on, and he was always like playing. He plays guitar in so many different styles. He's a really good classical player, but he also plays banjo. He's also a really good electric player. So that was always kind of like around. It was always in my life. My great grandmother was back in Ireland, was basically the most sought after session pianist in like all of Ireland back in sort of like the earliest part of the 20th century. So it's very much in the family. It had always been around, but I actually took a little while to sort of like, I think I was like 12 when I started playing, wait for it, it gets really cool, the flute. That was the very first instrument I picked up. It was just around the house. They were looking for people in orchestra, because funny enough, nobody wanted to play the flute. But that was pretty much the journey. Yeah, I'll do it. And then I realized when I was sort of like, 15, 16, that all the girls were laughing at me, and I thought, I better pick up a guitar, hadn't I? So
I think a lot of us got into the guitar because we're like, man, girls aren't impressed by video games, but they sure do love a guy who can sing Oasis.
Absolutely couldn't have described it more perfectly myself.
Yeah, I mean that's got to be the main reason why I picked up a guitar, was because I was super into Guitar Hero on the PlayStation 2 when it first came out. And I remember one time, I think I was in 8th grade, I took it to school for like a study hall party. And me and the guys were all playing it, and we were all super cool. And the girls were just sitting in the back like, what a bunch of dorks. And I was like, man, if I can't play the Foo Fighters in real life, it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, you learned that one pretty quickly. I think it was my one.
It's kind of like a necessity to get out of the bedroom.
Absolutely. I think my what was it? Wherever you will go by the calling was always my speciality in in that instance. There, I remember playing that at prom, and then everybody cried. That's.
Have you always been a solo artist, or were you in bands like in school and stuff?
Oh, dude, bands was always my thing. Like, I was terrified to become a solo artist. I was absolutely petrified. I can hands on say I played in bands for years. So my very first band that I was in when I was like 16, we got basically a development deal with Sony over here in the UK.
That's cool.
And then we did a bunch of stuff. Like, we did like Glastonbury, and like we supported like a really big boy. We did like a stadium tour with a boy band over here called Westlife. So we did like some really cool stuff in and around that. But it was always about bands. And then I did like a synth pop thing, sort of like 1975-esque sort of thing after that. And then I just started writing this country music, and I was just like, I was writing it for other people because I didn't think me doing it was particularly credible. But then I started writing songs about me and my own life, and just sort of like fell into it that way. And I was like, oh yeah, God, I'm just gonna have to do it and see what happens, really. But like, I can honestly hands on say, like, even after, I've probably been performing in bands sort of by near enough 10 years at that point, from the age of like 14, and going and playing a solo acoustic show by myself was hands on the most terrifying thing I've ever done.
I remember my first solo acoustic show. That first time I played by myself on a stage, I got so drunk because I was so nervous, and it went terribly.
Yeah, man.
Like, I think the club held about maybe 150 or 200, and I probably had 35 of my friends there. So like, on a Tuesday night in central Missouri, like, that was an okay show, but I was mortified. And one of my friends could tell that I was nervous, and he was the drummer of my first band when I was like 15. He goes, hey, let's do a shot of Jameson. I was like, okay, cool. And then he goes, hey, let's just do another shot of Jameson. I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And then like 3 shots of Jameson later, I was like, I'm not going to be able to play well.
It turns very quickly, doesn't it? Yeah.
You hit that wall, and there is no cure for it other than waiting.
Yeah, literally. Oh man. Yeah, no, I feel you on that one. I feel you.
So when did you decide to start taking it more seriously? Because there's some kind of a threshold you hit when you're a kid. Because I remember being in bands back in high school. I was in several of them, and then I started doing the solo artist thing. But there was never really like a come to Jesus moment where I was like, I have to do this. But then just one day I realized I couldn't do what music was. I couldn't make it professionally in central Missouri. So I was like, if I want to even give this a shot, I have to go somewhere where this happens. And that's why I picked Nashville. So did you have one of those moments where you were just all of a sudden like, I have to do this, that there was never a plan B?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, say, like, I was always like surrounded by it, and then obviously I was at this stage. I experienced a lot very young, so obviously I was in the industry sort of properly full time from a really young age. So I'd had that sort of like little experience of it, and then obviously basically the world went into recession then, and the deal got pulled from the table, and then I was like, right, okay, so what do I do now? So for me then, it was like I went to go and study it, and it's actually when I would say when I met my now business partner Drea at Puzzle Maker, who also plays guitar for me and produces all my stuff now, that I found the very sort of first like real like-minded person. And for me, that made it like so much more achievable. I didn't feel like an alien anymore. And it was like, that was a very natural process. And for us, we basically ended up by chance just creating a business with the production side of thing through university, which basically then led to this. And it was all quite an organic process. And I think I got to I was working in a shoe shop, and I got back from Nashville the first time, and I was like, no, this seems to actually have something. Like, it was like all the different bits was sort of like all the pieces, of the puzzle, for want of a better phrase, was sort of all starting to click together bit by bit. There was like bits of publishing interest and whatever. And I just thought, do you know what? If I don't do this now, like I'm just going to have to take the plunge. I'm just going to have to do it, because this feels like the right time, the right moment to just really go at it. And that's what I did, and never look back.
That's great, because there's a lot of people that are honestly too scared to make that jump. And there's we're in no shortage of people who want to make it, but what we are in shortage is people who are willing to try.
Yeah.
And I mean, in Nashville, it doesn't seem like it, but it's because everyone in this city is a transplant. We all came from somewhere, but there's a lot of people still living up in those states. Like back in my hometown, there's definitely still people who were like, oh, I wish I had moved to Nashville when I was young. I wish I had given it a go. And they live their life with regret because of that. So even if hits the fan and you don't end up making it, long term, you're going to look back and still realize, man, at least I got to try.
Absolutely, man. I was exactly the same. I was just like, don't go at it with any regrets. Like, you know, I don't want to be, you know, 40, 50 years old and just be sat there sort of like, I mean, my dad always said it to me. My dad always said to me, my dad was a financial advisor that loved to play music. He was just like, don't ever stop the music. He said, because I wish I hadn't. And having that like in the background was always actually a really, really good thing.
That's cool. So are you the only person in your family who's actually like trying to do it professionally now?
Yeah.
Or has everybody else kind of been involved in the business, so to speak?
No, so like I would say, my great grandmother was like a full-time musician, and then basically my great uncle was basically, it's not really like, it wasn't like the music industry, like he was in a full-time like military band, so it was like music was like his thing. It was a weird one, but anyway, but it's kind of like, it's always been around, so it wasn't like a completely alien concept when I turned around to my mum and dad and was like look, I'm actually going to do this full-time, like it is going to be my thing. So they kind of like backed me all the way, and all my family have kind of backed me all the way. Like it's always been sort of like around and accepted, and not like a sort of like a complete alien concept really, which is cool.
That's cool. I grew up around music too, but I grew up in a very classical family. People who both my father and my oldest brother are classical pianists and are like directors of choirs and everything.
Right. And
my middle brother was a master's violin student, like all through his college training, and I kind of feel like kind of a black sheep of my family, because at some point every member of my family gave up. So I got to see three members of my family just quit. Yeah. And I could not live with myself if that was the case. Like, no, I'm with you. My dad practiced. He studied piano in Paris back in the 70s. Like he was an incredible pianist, and he's still a great pianist now. But getting to know that all of these people in my family gave it a go and didn't want to do it kind of sat with me really early on. I was like, I can't just be the fourth person in my family to go work at a bookstore. Yeah. 100%. I feel you. I was around the same kind of thing. Like, you know, mum was a teacher, dad was a financial advisor, and like mum was fulfilled in what she did, but dad definitely always wasn't. And he was very clear of telling me that, especially when I started doing this. He was like, yeah, man, just go for it. Just go for it. Do it. So what are you going for now? You're putting out records. Let's be honest, you were here not too long ago in Nashville. You're playing internationally. What's going on with Danny McMahon these days?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I mean, you know, going back to that whole kind of concept, like for me, it was like the number one dream was to always be able to do it full time and make a living out of it. And then like we're doing that now, and that's so sick. Like that's like my rock. That's my foundation. That's what I base everything on. But in terms of striving, like, you know, I mean, today this year's been amazing. Like a big one for me was that I wanted to play C2C Festival. We've done that, so I just want to try and like elevate the next version of whatever that's going to be. And then obviously, like, you know, I just want to see like the amount of people coming to shows, you know, growing, and seeing those numbers grow and seeing the interest grow. And, you know, like I never try and necessarily, like I do plan the journey. I kind of like, I have goals that I want to hit, but I know that in between those goals, like what's going to happen always ends up looking very different to what you necessarily might think it might do. So that's kind of the idea for me. There's going to be more music coming out next year. There's going to be loads more touring, you know, as I say, getting out to the States more and more. Obviously, like COVID was like really tough for that, because going out and playing shows was a massive part of, especially when, you know,
Right.
we won, obviously, you know, UK Country Artist of the Year in 2019, and going out and playing shows and being everywhere and being in front of people all over the world was a massive part of that. So just, you know, say rebuilding that momentum back up to sort of where it needs to be with the international touring side of things is always big on the agenda. So obviously we've got that rolling this year. So long may it continue next year.
So you're talking about watching the numbers grow. Let's talk about the numbers that you just had grow for the first time. You just played your first sold-out hometown show, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
dude, tell us about that. That is something that every musician will always remember, is the first time they sold out a venue. I remember my first time. Tell me about this.
Yeah, it was amazing. So it was really cool as well because, like, I was basically, what happened was earlier this year we went on tour, and I did a hometown show, and I was really happy with the numbers that came out. And obviously we were coming off the back of COVID. It was still quite bad here at that particular point, but you know, the numbers weren't what they necessarily would have been otherwise. And I was like, okay, man, like, we really got to work on this. Like, what are we going to do? How am I going to get those people in the room? And I literally just focused all my energy into that. I had a phone call with a couple of agents. They were like, look, this is what we need you to do. If you're going to be taken seriously, this is what you got to do. I was like, okay, all right, game on. Game on, let's do it. Like, you know, I was talking about those big goals and other things happening in between. I was just like, let's just do it. And what was really special about it is not only did we sell it out, but the 3 support acts that were playing are all guys that I produce as well, who are all local. And so it was just like, sort of like, for me, it's always been really like, I want like where I'm from to be a really like hotspot for country music in the UK, because there are a couple, Manchester and London probably being the main 2. Like, I really want Bristol to grow with that and sort of be taken really seriously, and for it to emerge. So to have a sold out, as I say, country night in Bristol for me was incredible. Obviously for myself as well, but I saw it as being more than that. You know, I really wanted to sort of like put Bristol on the map in the UK for this genre of music that's ever growing. It's really cool.
What was the venue called?
It's called Z Alley.
Shout out.
Yes,
I know we've got a couple of UK listeners. I see that 1 or 2 pop up every week. So if you're listening, go to Bristol and hang out with Danny.
Yeah, man, come along, because it's going to get bigger and better. So we've done this one, we got to get to a bigger one now. So let's do it.
So do you ever make it over to London to perform?
Yeah, I played there in the week, actually. I played at the Troubadour in London in the week, cool. Which was really, really cool. That was supporting a Nashville artist. There's a girl called Christy Huff was over on her UK
I know her.
stint. Yeah. She was over on a stint over here. I'd written with her in lockdown, which was really cool. So during that whole quarantine period, so we'd written like quite a lot together. So to actually meet her in real life in much better circumstances was awesome. It was really cool.
So do you help get people coming from the States over into the UK? Are you kind of like a conduit to help them kind of get plugged in? Since in Nashville, for all intents and purposes, I'm kind of that guy for you, but are you that kind of guy over there? Yeah,
I try to be. Because I think there's definitely like a really sort of like, you know, a really cool like core audience that like for the guys coming over from the States to be introduced to, that will actually like, they're really like invested. They will really get into what you're doing. They'll really get behind you. They'll buy your merch. They'll, you know, post about it, or share all your stuff. Like, they'll get really, really involved with it, and they'll follow that journey. That's kind of like what the core nucleus of like the UK country fan scene is based on, which is really cool. So I think for the guys over in Nashville to kind of be introduced to that over here is a really cool. It can only be a positive thing, really.
That's actually something that I wanted to talk to you about, was the UK flavor of country music, because what a lot of people might not recognize is that country music is like, yeah, sure, Nashville is kind of the face of it, but there's so much more beyond it. Like, I played at the Bedford there in, I guess is it Balham? Is that where it's at?
Yeah,
Balham?
Yeah, you got it, yeah.
Yeah, so I was in a country rock duo, and I think it was 18 that I toured over there, and we played, and it was huge. They weren't there to see me, but they were just there to see country music.
Yeah.
And that's something that I don't particularly see a lot of here, is people oftentimes won't go out unless like they know their friends are playing, or someone famous might be there. But it seemed like a different cultural thing over there, where people were just excited to just be somewhere and hear something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, fundamentally, like, I see it as it's almost like its own little micro subculture, in terms of the sense that it's like, it's a way of life being a country music fan is an identity here because it is niche, because it's not mainstream. Being a country music fan is for a lot of people is the identity, and that's so cool. There's a lot of there's a lot of love and a lot of passion that comes with that, which is great. As I say, for me to get me going over here was absolutely fundamental, to be honest. So I'm forever grateful for it.
So do the country scenes and the Americana scenes bleed together over there very much? Because I was actually performing Americana Fest, technically. Yeah. But do those two scenes interact with one another pretty often?
Yes and no. Like some festival bills definitely will. They have like their separate award shows. But yes, they do kind of. I mean, I would still say over here at the moment that like Americana is definitely regarded as like the cool country. 100%. Like if you say, I was like, yeah, I'm in an Americana band, I was like, oh, that's cool. And it's like, if I say I'm a country artist, you often have a lot more explaining to do. It's sort of like that same thing as like, when you sit around with your family for Thanksgiving and explain to them that you're a musician. You're kind of like the level of explaining that you've got to do to kind of explain what it is you've got to do. It's very much that thing with like, when I say do country music, people say, oh, like Dolly Parton then. It's like, no, dude, it's not nothing like that. Because obviously,
like that.
Because like the average person over here has no idea who, a lot, I would say 90% of people probably don't know who Garth Brooks is. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of like when you're in those like circles of people who really get it, then obviously, it's a totally different thing. But like day to day, even when I'm doing like, like a national radio interview, a lot of people will sort of still don't really know the Keith Urbans and the Sam Hunts of, the Dan Shays of this world, people that I'm influenced by, they probably won't know those names. So it's sort of like getting into the really understanding the nitty gritty of what it is. It's a weird one.
Right. So since you're kind of this country artist, not an Americana artist, how do you describe it to the people who might not either understand it or might not know who you are? How do you describe your sound?
Yeah. So I often say I'm a country pop influenced singer-songwriter. There's two other bits, the pop and the singer-songwriter, that people can kind of like understand. But then when I open my mouth and they sort of get the sort of the twangy element of it in there, they kind of go, okay, that kind of makes a bit more sense. It's sort of like, because that is fundamentally what it is. Like, I love to sing, I love to write songs, and I love pop and country music and everything sort of in between that umbrella. So I think that's kind of like a lot easier for people to digest initially, let's say.
Well, since I know you're kind of on a time crunch, give us an idea of what you're hoping to accomplish, other than obviously the international touring, the stadiums, the hit records. What are some of the like goals that light the fire under your butt? What's the compulsion to be in music?
Love the question. For me, like fundamentally, like my favorite thing, and going back to the sold out show thing, is being able to write songs that obviously mean something to you, but fundamentally mean something to other people, and being able to see that on a mass level. Not to be famous, but to be able to, relate to people on a mass level, to understand or experience that universal emotion with somebody that you've never met through music on a large scale. That's what does it for me. Like,
that's awesome.
That's why I could never see myself doing anything else. That is 100% like my drug. When I stand on that stage and I see that happen, it gives me a feeling like nothing else, to be quite honest with you.
It's this transcendent thing where you kind of feel yourself leave your body, and then you're watching yourself watch the audience. Like,
that's it.
It's something that it's impossible to experience any other way.
Yeah, this is it. And the more people that I can affect doing that with something that I've created with people and for me that's also really important, that I've created with people that I genuinely love and appreciate. That's it, man. That's it there.
Well, give us some plugs, Danny. I know, again, you're on a time crunch. You're sitting in your studio right now. You're busy being a producer and a badass. Tell people who are listening here where they can find you, whether it be on the internet or live, if you got more shows coming up abroad, and any short-term and long-term plans you want to see for yourself. Just getting back into the industry here in Nashville?
Absolutely. Great question. So, I mean, if you want to find out about what I'm doing, the website is dannymcmahon.co.uk. All the socials are at Danny McMahon UK. It's all the same across the board for your Twitters, your TikToks, your Instagrams, your Facebooks, whatever else you're into. I'll probably be there. Not OnlyFans. We haven't got that one yet, but we're
yeah, if you decide to start selling pictures of your feet, we've got a great platform.
We've got.
Well, I will have all of those links you just mentioned tagged in our episode description so people can interact with you. Do you have any last minute advice for anybody who might be looking to make that jump to being a full-time musician? Because it's scary and it's difficult. Do you have any advice for people who might be considering making that jump?
Yeah, be smart and don't see everything at initial face value. That's the bit that people get freaked out about. So like people go, oh, well, if I do this, then it will be this. I was like, yeah, but what if you do this and this and this? And then, you know, it's like, you have to see it further down the line than what something that maybe, like I say, might initially be at face value, and like be smart about it. So it's sort of like people go, oh, well, I can't make any money from that. Well, okay, but might not be from that right now, but are there other avenues that, like, you know, I mean, like for me, like all I wanted to do was just do music full time rather than work in a shoe shop. So like, you know, initially for me that was like going out and I was, you know, would do a bit of teaching, or I'd do songwriting mentoring, or I would work for the local music university, and those little bits that sort of like allow you to then, okay, I'm earning from this, so then I can spend a bit more time on my original music. And then suddenly, slowly but surely, you then find your fingers in other pies, like bits of publishing, and then you suddenly get a PRS, BMI payment from whatever, and suddenly you're making bits of money from this. And it's that little bit by bit by bit, the little trickling little bits of income. And there's obviously, I was building this business at the same time as well. Those little bits there just will eventually, if you're patient, and as I say, if you don't expect the earth to begin with, because that's the other thing I would say, nobody owes you anything.
Right. Don't
ever think that they do, because they don't. You could be the most talented person in the world, but they don't. You've got to, you know, as I say, fundamentally, what I always say to people is you got to scream so loud that they have to listen. I love that. Well, Danny, thanks for taking some time out of your busy day. I guess it's nighttime over there. It is. Thank you for coming. Next time you're in Nashville, let's get you here in the studio. We'll do a long deep dive into the human of Danny McMahon. I would love that. Thank you so much. I just heard my own accent so bad, McMahon. McMahon. Well, Danny, thanks again for coming on to the podcast today. Last words before we hop off here? First and foremost, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and stay tuned. I will be back over in Nashville pretty soon. Keep your eyes and ears peeled. We'll be sure to book you again. So you can follow all of our social media at Nashville Tour Stop, and you can find us on the web at NashvilleTourStop.com. You can follow us on Patreon. You can contribute there. You can get tickets to our shows. You can get our entire episode backlog. Find that in the episode link description. But until then, do remember that all roads lead right back here to the Nashville Tour Stop. The 22 came around and you stayed out late. You didn't call, started your fall. I fell into mistake, heartbreak. We had all we wanted, but life came along and we lost it. You and him and your summer night flame, thrown away for a while.